Hey everyone, this is Julie Murphy. Today we're working on another coloring book page, and what I'm going to show you how to do is I'm going to scan this in and we're going to reduce it, and then we're going to turn it into an applique. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is go into my design center and we are going to scan in a line image. Remember, we have a regular scan if we don't necessarily want to have any lines on the screen, a line image, and an illustration scan. And since we have just lines on this one, we're just going to scan that in. Our scan is complete, and there it is on our screen. So the first thing we want to do is take our arrows and just close it in around our design just to get rid of any of the background noise that might be on the screen. And we want to be close but not touching our design. Once we're happy with that, we'll say OK. And there is our grayscale of our image. So we will set it, and there it is on our screen. And remember, we have our viewing window down here. If we want our background darker, we can go this direction. If we want to see what our stitch lines are, we can go this direction. Let's go ahead and leave just a little bit of background. The first thing we can do is also save it into the Pocket, which I do recommend that just in case power goes out or you get interrupted and need to come back to it. So that's the red arrow with the Pocket, and this saves it into the Pocket of our design center. We'll place it there, and now we're ready to move forward. So the first thing I want to do is, this is kind of a large scale for making an applique. So I want to first, as long as the red box is around it, I want to choose size, and I want to actually, this makes it smaller and this makes it larger. So let's go ahead and reduce it down. And you can see now, let me zoom in so you can see what's happening. Do you see how now I'm making it smaller, but you can still see the original background? Let me zoom back out for you. And that's why I wanted to leave the background so you could see what was happening. Now it's a good idea to go ahead and take our background out, and we can see exactly how small our design is going to stitch. Right now it's 141 by 119 millimeters. And so 141 is about 5.5 inches. That's still pretty large. So let's make it a little bit smaller. So that is now 116. So if you'd like to know how big your design is, we can go up here to the notepad and we can change it. Let's go over to page 8 and we can change it to inches and say OK. And that's about 4.5 inches by 3.9 inches. So if you're trying to get it to a specific size, you can still continue. Suppose I want it right at about 4.5. There you go. And I'm going to change it back to millimeters because it's just easier for me to work in millimeters. We'll say OK. So once we're happy with the size, we will answer OK. And now we're back at our Design Center main screen. The next thing I think I would like to do is actually duplicate this little puppy so there's actually two on this side. So I can take my selection window, which is the box that has the dots going around it, make sure it's illuminated dark green behind it, and I can draw a box around this one puppy. And then at this point I can either choose the duplicate button, which makes a copy of it. I can cut it, but for this I can actually change his size. For right now I want to just copy him. And there he is. There's a second puppy. So I'm going to move him down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the camera so you can see. We want to clean him up a little bit because, as you can see, we've actually got all this extra from the bigger dog. We've got his paws and things in our design. So let's zoom in so you can see what's going on. The next thing we're going to do is choose our eraser and the small eraser. And we're just going to erase some of these extra marks. You can see I took part of his tail out. Didn't mean to do that. So we'll put that back. We're using our undo arrow. And every time you lift your pencil or your stylus, it starts in a new spot. So like right there, I just touched and didn't want to do that. I think I'm going to undo it again one more time. I'm going to zoom in a little bit better so I can see a little bit easier of what I'm doing. You can see I've removed part of the tail, and I'll go back and draw those in. Okay, so now those marks are removed. Let's zoom back out. So what I want to do now to put the marks back in is I want to go into the line property area where the pencil is, and I want to just make a few marks where I accidentally took part of his tail out. So let's zoom back in. Let me move our viewing window. And I'm going to make a few marks where the tail needs to join up. Let me increase the size. So now we are zoomed in at 800. And it just makes it a little easier to join his tail. Okay, so it doesn't matter that I made all those extra marks, because let me show you what we're going to do. Remember, we have our eraser right here, and I'm going to choose the smallest one over here, and then we're going to say OK, and now we're going to clean up our extra marks. Oops, don't want to do either of those. Oh, I'm having trouble cleaning up. Okay, and then let's make another pencil mark. So we'll touch our pencil in our line property area. There we go. So don't worry if you get a little messy with your pencil or your eraser. You can use the pencil in the line property and fix it with the eraser. So let's zoom back out. All right, one more zoom out. And now what we can do is make sure that we touch our little selection box again, and we can draw our selection box, which I didn't quite get that, so I'm going to redo it. To get rid of a selection box, you just need to touch the screen, then touch the selection box. You just want to make sure you get all of what you're trying to move. So now I've selected him, and now I can drag him over to where I would like to have him. And let me zoom in and show you what I'm trying to do. Do you see as I drag him here, let me zoom in a little bit. As I drag him there, it's going on top of the bigger dog's foot. So I think what I want to do before I leave him there is move him back out, so I'll be able to put a selection box around him again. And I'm going to take part of this foot out. So let me slide him back up, see what I need to take out. So I want to take it to about right there, so I can add this third puppy. So let me zoom out for you. So we're going to touch our eraser and choose our smallest eraser. We'll go up here and zoom in a little bit more on that foot. And I know I want to take this part of the foot out. I think that's about right. So we'll zoom back out on the video, and we will zoom back out on our design. We will see how this box is not illuminated yet. See how the eraser has the dark green around it? So if we started doing anything with our puppy now, we would start erasing him. We want to make sure that we select the selection box, and see now it is illuminated dark green. And we'll make our box around our puppy. And we will drag him up. There we go. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. And now you see how the bigger dog's foot is not in the head of our little puppy. So if we're happy with that, we can keep going. Now I do want to talk about a couple of things that you have options with. Remember, these are all, the system is now recognizing all of this as lines. At this point, you have the option of using some of your fill stitches. Let me just show you that. So we'll take the notepad, and this is our fill stitch right here. So let's give him a yellow belly so that we can see it on the screen. And if I then just take the paintbrush, I can just give him some fill stitches just like this. Now if I wanted his whole body to be done, I would touch the bucket and turn it in that way. So let's try, so that one we've got a little bit of a belly painted. And if we want to see how it's going to look as a fill stitch, let's choose next. Zoom back out. And if we touch next, we can make sure that, well, we probably want the undersewing to be on. So we're going to turn that on. We'll say set. We want it to do it at its auto angle, 100%. And the others are just fine. And let's hit preview. We'll say okay. And because we haven't changed the other stitches for the puppies yet, they're doing it all in the satin stitch. And I really don't want to do that. And that's why it's a good idea to preview before you go any further. So let's hit return and return again. And let's zoom back in. And now what we need to do is make sure that we go into our line property box and change all of these stitches to either a single or a bean stitch. I think for this particular design, I just want a single stitch. So we'll go into our line property box, choose our notepad, choose our single stitch, and because I want to be able to see what I've done, I'm actually going to choose red. Obviously, I'm not going to stitch my little puppies in red, but it helps me to see what I have changed. So now this does take a little bit of time. You want to use the bucket in the line property area and just start touching. Now, one thing that if you decide you want to do these like the little spots and things in something else, you can actually change the color at this point. But I'm just wanting it all to be one color. Okay. We just want to look and make sure, you see why it's important to change the color so you can, let me zoom in so you can see. So you can make sure that you haven't left anything in black, which means it's still a satin stitch. Everything in red is going to be the single stitch. Once we've changed the stitches to the stitch type that we're looking for, we can then say next. Make sure our undersewing is on and preview and say okay. And he looks pretty good at this point with the little puppies around him. I am going to save it into the pocket again so that if I have to come back for any reason, it'll be there. And once it's in the pocket, I'll say set and okay. And now we're in our embroidery screen. Now, as you remember, I started this by saying I want to turn this little design into an applique. So before I do anything, I just want to show you the applique button is here. It's really important before I hit this applique button to go into our notepad here at the top and go to page 8 and see right now I'm only 1 point up. This is on page 8 for my embroidery applique distance, and see how it looks like our button. We're only 1 millimeter away, and so I want to increase that. 3 is what our normal setting is away. Let me show you something. So here is a millimeter ruler, and it's always good to have a millimeter ruler close by. And the 1 obviously is a centimeter, but it also means it's 10 millimeters. So I want my applique to be 5 millimeters away from my design. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to increase. And there we go. So once I'm at 5, I'll say OK. And now, see how the red box is around our design? I am ready to say applique. And there it is. It puts it all the way around our design. Let me zoom in so you can see that. And this is 5 millimeters away from our cute little design. So we will now say embroidery. And it shows us, let me zoom back out for you. Okay. So what it's going to do is it's going to stitch out his little tummy first. Remember the yellow fill stitch? And then all the red outline. So you now, and then these 3 start our applique. So it'll do this stitch and it'll stop, and it's really a placement stitch. And then this is our tack down stitch. And then this will give us kind of a zigzag, and then it'll do our satin stitch. And that's how this will all work. So let me zoom back out. And now we're ready to stitch out. And that's how you do an applique from a coloring book page. Thanks for watching.